Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar this afternoon. This is a live webinar. Today's webinar is all about understanding staff behaviours so people get along. So this has had quite a lot of people register for this webinar. So obviously it's a really good hot topic, and I hope you enjoy the webinar that we're about to put on for you today. Let me just go through what our webinar is all about. So today's webinar is all about understanding, as I said before, staff behaviour so people get along, and this is what we're going to cover in this webinar. So why do people behave the way they do? And that's obviously around personality, attitude, and so on. What is acceptable and not acceptable behaviour within the workplace? How to deal with poor and unacceptable behaviour within the workplace? How to deal with staff conflict, and how to empower staff to behave appropriately to grow your business. So I really hope you enjoy what we're going to go through in today's webinar. Today I'm joined with one of our wonderful HR consultants, Maja Trpevska. Hello, Maja.
Hello, everybody.
And thanks for joining. And a webinar, we always make it nice and interesting by having one or two people on the webinar. And you're going to talk about some of the topics today, which will be absolutely fantastic. So for those who don't know me, my name is Colin Wilson. I'm the Director of Key Business Advisors. And every month we run a series of webinars to try and help businesses to grow. These webinars are for free. So yeah, it's good advice, and we hope you enjoy the webinar. Everyone on this webinar is muted, so but we will ask some questions and get you to put some questions into the chat box. For those on the webinar, you will see the full webinar today. For those who have registered who are not on the webinar, they will receive a copy of the webinar. If you really love this webinar and you want to see a copy of the webinar on our website within 48 hours, along with the rest of our webinars we've run, you will see it up on our website at www.kiva.com.au. All right, Maja, so I think we're just about ready to start. So Key Business Advisors, our mission is to take business from good to great, and our purpose is to take our customers on a journey to help them improve their business through all aspects of employee engagement and performance. So we're all about helping businesses to get to that level, to go from good to great. This is what we specialise in, so we're very big on business advice and strategy. You can see I do a lot of professional sales training, and we have a wonderful HR team. There's 5 full-time HR professionals in this business that are out there working in our clients' businesses and helping them to achieve all the outcomes they need when it comes to managing staff. All right, so why do people behave the way they do? And this is our first topic. Well, there's a couple of reasons. So if I put it down, the first one I think is, and we do a lot of disc profiling for a lot of companies, it's just understanding different personality styles. So, in today's world, we all have different personalities that work in the workplace, and this is where sometimes things can be misread. I'm not going to rule out the fact that somebody who has very poor attitude or bad attitude, that's obviously going to affect things, and May will go into that a bit later, why maybe people behave the way that they do. But certainly, if we look at a person's profile, you can see that if I'm a person of a D, which is more direct, you can see that I'm more challenge, results, and action orientated. And then our I style, our steadiness style, and our conscientious style. To try and help you understand this a little bit more for those people who don't understand DISC or know what DISC personality is about, this is how it works. So, people who have a D style, and we are all of everything of this. I just want to make that very clear. So we don't go around saying, well, you're a D, you're a very dominant type of person. But a D style is, a person that's very direct, results orientated, they're firm, strong-willed, and they're forceful. So they're very opinionated. They want, they've got to get what they want, and very driven, if I can say that, and a big risk taker. If I'm an I, I'm a person that is more, outgoing, enthusiastic, optimistic, high-spirited, and lively. So I'm a bit of a chatterbox within the business, and love to talk. And there's nothing wrong with that, because it all, it all makes up for the people who are quiet. If I look at a person of steadiness, they're more even-tempered, accommodating, patient, humble, and tactful. And somebody who's conscientious, they're more analytical, reserved, precise, private, and systematic. So I can go right through and go through a DISC profile for people who are on this webinar. However, you can find more information about understanding personality types, but the way it works in a workplace is if I've got somebody, I just want to make sure I'm very clear with how I explain this. If I've got somebody in my business, and if I go back to this slide here, that is, their primary style is around, the influential type of person, action, enthusiasm, and collaboration, then, these type of people, if I can say it, they're going to be full of life, a lot of energy, a lot of emotion in them, and very much will probably speak sometimes before they think. Is tender. A DI definitely does that, because you can be a combination of a DI or an IS or a CS or a DC. So people who are more of a DI can tend to speak before they think, where more of a CS style, being a bit more, quiet, reflective, and more will think before they actually speak. If I'm like an IS, I'm the type of person that has a lot of emotion, whereas if I'm more of a DC type, where it's around action, challenge, and results, I'm the type of person that have less emotion. So, I might say in a company, hey, listen, this is a great idea, this is what we want to do, and the IS style think, well, that's fantastic, and the DC says, well, hang on a tick, why are we doing that? And start questioning our authority of why we've made this decision. So these are the type of things that happen in a workplace where different personalities sometimes don't see eye to eye, and it's not a case of it's a personal attack or anything like that. It's just a case of just a different way of thinking. So our personalities, we are born into this world with a personality, and they develop over time, and your personality can change depending on roles and stuff like that. But definitely when we go into a workplace, if we're looking at anything to do with conflict resolution or trying to help people get along or create a better team environment with a better culture, one of the things that we definitely talk about is understanding the different personality types and the good and the bad behaviours of those different personality types, because that can affect the workplace. So it's just really important to actually understand that, and I don't think enough companies do enough of this type of personality profiling in their business so to people understand how they think. And if I could just explain, I'm a DI, I'm a very direct, influential type of person. I'm all about results, action, enthusiasm. And I have a shading into accuracy, but for me to be accurate with what I'm doing, I really need to slow my pace down. And for an example, maybe work in a quiet room to actually understand what I'm trying to do. So a good example of what I'm talking about is yesterday I was doing some proposals. I can't do that in a busy environment because I've got to see what's going on. What I do is I like to have my own space, shut myself away, slow my pace down to actually to do that. And there'd be no different if we went the other way around. I don't mind public speaking, so if somebody was a CS style, they would have a bit of a fear of and do a lot of practice, drill, and rehearse before they actually get up on the stage and address an audience. So I hope that sort of makes sense, but definitely personality styles will affect people's behaviour within the workplace. Especially if I've got a very poor attitude. Something else that I'd like to talk about, which is something that I do talk about a lot, and that is working with different generations. So I'm not going to go into different nationalities because you can't judge somebody. That is totally unfair, judging somebody by their nationality or race or where they come from, and that's illegal, which that's in the Department of Maja. But I think what we've got to look at in today's world is the different generations that also work in a workplace where, if you have a look at our millennials, and the way I've worked this out is, the year that they're born. Somebody who's 18 to 25 in a workplace right now would be classed as a millennial. And you think about technology, they're born into technology. In today's digital world of technology, they're fast at doing things. They've been educated quicker than, say, an older generation. I think they're better educated. So when, we put a millennial on in a business, they're trying to work things out and trying to help and trying to get things to move a lot faster, which sometimes, again, may not work from the people who are more experienced or a bit more older. If you look at our Gen Zs, they're fully engaged with today's digital world of technology. They're aged between 26 and 32. You can see our Gen Ys, again, 33 to 44. They're engaged with today's digital world of technology as well and understand everything. Not saying that a baby boomer or a Gen X can't, but we never grew up with it. It was never introduced. You know, the day that I left school, we had no computers or PCs in the school. When I went to secondary school, that all started to come into effect when I started in the workplace at 18 years of age. So if you have a look at our Gen X, I always say trying to understand today's digital world of technology. So we're not as fast and quick at it as the younger generation. And then baby boomers, who people have still got baby boomers working in their business. Well, they're trying to learn today's digital world of technology. And, you know, veterans, we do have a client that is 77 years of age. So, you know, I'll make a bit of a laugh that technology wasn't even invented. But if you look at these different generations, there's total different upbringings. And again, sometimes, you know, the way that they've been brought into this world, and if I could say, you know, morals, what they think is right, you know, from a baby boomer or a Gen X might be totally different to a millennial or a Gen Z. And again, these can also affect things in a workplace just by basing on our morals and the way we believe things are. So working in a workplace and trying to get people to get along and behave the way we want them to do, it's also, I think it's a big thing about, which is all about understanding. So I will say, you know, we look at millennials, they're very well educated, they have the theory because they've been educated, but I think it's more the Gen X and the baby boomers, even the Gen Ys, that have actually got the practical, because they've actually been working in a business for some time now. And, you know, when we talk to HR graduates, you know, what they think happens to what actually happens, you know, the theory is great, but they really see what actually happens in the big world of today when they actually come and start doing some of the practical work. So I hope that's been, I've covered that. And if you've got any questions, then, you know, please, you know, don't mind to raise your hand and ask some questions. So when we talk about dealing with seniority roles, you know, I think what's really important is, regardless of who you are in the business, what age you are, you know, if there's somebody seniority in a position, the first thing we need to do is we need to make sure that they fully understand the role of what that person is. So if I'm a managing director or I'm a senior manager, my team need to understand what is my role. And I also believe, why am I in this role? So how have I got to this position and how have I earned it, if I can say that? I think that's really, really important. There needs to be a huge amount of respect for this person who is in the role. Now, we know that the younger generation of today want to get to a senior role quicker than what, say, a Gen X did. But again, there still needs to make sure we've got that respect. And I think, you know, whoever is in this seniority role, you know, they've got to have really good direction and leadership, and they've got to know how, and communication skills. So we want people to follow their direction and leadership, and we want them to be empowering people to come along for the ride. So where do things go wrong in a business? I see it from anyone that's got a senior role, whether it be a team leader, a manager, a director. Lack of leadership will make things go wrong. And if we've got different personalities and strong personalities in a workplace, and there's lack of leadership, then be prepared for things to go from bad to worse if they're not addressed. Lack of discipline is another thing too. So, you know, again, when we look at the different personalities, sometimes people allow people to get away with things and don't address them head on, and that can create conflict within the workplace. Definitely, and we've seen it before, favoritism. So a leader in a company has their favorites in the business, which then creates conflict for others in a workplace, because not everyone's treated fair and equal. And I think lack of communication, I talked about that before, but communication is everything. So if people are finding out things that are done via grapevine, then that's not good as well. So again, for any other webinar that people have attended of mine, I always talk about the importance of communicating your mission, vision, and values. What are your goals and objectives? So everyone knows where we're going and why we're doing what we're doing. And I think, you know, the other thing too is when we've got a toxic environment, and unfortunately we make a living with some clients that come on board, they come to us because they've got a toxic environment, and the environment gets worse and worse and worse. And it's gotten worse because as things have festered, they haven't got along and addressed them, and then they wait till it's too late in hoping that some of these issues of people's behaviours might go away, and they don't. So I hope I've educated you and I've talked enough in relation to, so you can see why things can go wrong. And I think, you know, for me, that lack of respect, even colleague to colleague, you know, if there's any type of conflict, then that is something that you really need to squash within a business. Okay, so that's my topic one. And what I have got here is, if anyone's interested, is a personality profile of what it's all about. This is a profile of me, and you know, your dish style tells a story of who you are and what you're all about. And you know, there's sales profiles, there is management profiles, there are employee profiles that can be done. You can sort of see this is what I'm all about: results, action, enthusiasm. And this is the way that, you know, I operate, and my strengths, and also some of my challenges as well. So so again, you know, as you can see here, you can get a lot out of doing one of these profiles. So Maja, if I hand it over to you, so take us through this next topic, which is what is acceptable and not acceptable behaviour within a workplace.
Great, thank you so much, Colin. I think definitely from the disc profiling perspective, quite valuable. We use them in our team. So it's also to cater for a better understanding of how we can work together or work smarter with each other, not harder. To try and figure out, okay, well, we know Maja loves to have a chat, and so does Colin. Well, they'll do the presentation and talk to everybody else. Where we're someone that's conscientious or supportive will look to do the background work for the business. What we want to talk about is the type of behaviours and the conduct that we want to share within the team. Now, we've done a bit of presentations over the last couple of weeks, specifically around getting staff re-engaged and using this tool as a communication method to set the standards and expectations. So we're talking about providing positive conduct and standards. So that also improves the morale. And I think it's been great over the last couple of weeks that we've got to see staff that may not have been as communicative using this opportunity to, when we've reset the standards and expectations, to really thrive on that communication method with the team. We also talk about providing a professional and safe environment. So we all, like I say, we all love to banter in workplaces, but when it comes to customer service and providing that, we're all here because of a customer. So we need to make sure that that's professionally maintained. When we're talking about a safe environment, we're looking at that we can do the job role successfully, and we've got the right tools and needs to complete that. We also treat everybody with dignity and respect. So if you all look at providing, you know, with a team, you're looking at the accountability. So if I ask Colin to do a certain task, I know that I respect Colin enough to get that done, but also I can hold Colin accountable to complete those tasks and not have to follow up. It's really important to follow company policies and procedures. Specifically, even if businesses don't have written ones. So obviously we encourage that you do have written policies in place. But depending on the nature and the size of the business, you almost have a verbalized agreement of what's company policies or procedures anyway. But it's important to get those documented down. The other key one that we don't see that a lot of people do or don't remember that that's there is calling out reportable breaches and inconsistencies. And what we mean by that there is if you see something that's not right, whether it's not legal, whether it's something that you might have to second guess yourself and wonder if that's right or wrong, bring that up. And it's really important that you won't be victimised because you've brought up concern or raised an issue in the business. That's what we consider as acceptable behaviour and standards of employment. Any questions on that one?
No questions so far, Maja. It's all good. You're doing well.
Wonderful.
Take us through what's not acceptable.
So the next slide's about what's not acceptable, and we probably tend to hone in more on this because we do a lot of work behind the scenes as well on staff not following what we call a reasonable performance management process, which is the whole life cycle of the business. And when we're talking about what's not acceptable, we talk about the staff not being able to follow company policies, procedures and standards. So I guess they're not practicing what we preach. when we're not acting in good faith or going against the company. Now, I look at this as slandering or deciding because you didn't agree with a certain process within the business, you've chosen not to do that. Now, something as simple as potentially changing a rubbish bin could be going against the business, even though it's a standard practice of the business, if it is. The other one that I've got there is smoking during work hours. So what I mean by that is, gone are the days where you used to be able to smoke while you work, a couple of generations ago. But essentially what we mean here is not smoking during work hours. You know, as a staff member, you've got your staff members have before they're starting work, during their tea breaks or lunch breaks, or after work, have the ability to do that should they choose to smoke. What I mean here is, while you're perhaps driving a motor vehicle or you are during work hours considering, okay, well, I just need to go make a phone call outside. It is a work call, however, I'm just going to choose to have a smoke while I'm doing that. Now, in front of a customer, the sound, the hearing and listening to it also may put them off through a communication method as well.
I think it also goes back to, Mate, it also talks about smoking, because it's a real touchy subject for people who are smokers out there. But I think it goes back to what's acceptable and what's not acceptable within the workplace and how that's driven. So you can't have certain, you know, for the rules are that, you know, for people who do smoke, you know, like, you know, I need my fix and I go out and have a cigarette. But for those who don't smoke, look at that and go, well, that's unfair. So it's about making sure that those rules are in place. Yep.
That's right. When I talk about inappropriate use of company property, I'm talking about, as a company, we might provide you with a motor vehicle or a mobile phone or plan or so forth, but there would be restrictions to that. So, for example, someone using a company mobile phone and having a group chat on it. I know we tend to use WhatsApp or different communications like Teams, but knowing that that's still a work tool that you use and you do have company property, something like banter or sending inappropriate photos or messages, and sometimes because of the chain of the events could disrupt or could be considered inappropriate. So being mindful what we do use them for. And especially if you've been given the opportunity to use these tools out of hours. So for example, an iPad, and you've been using it for limited personal use, minding what you're actually using that for. The other thing that's during work hours is ignoring or refusing to carry out work duties or time wasting. That's sitting at your desk. I know a few retail shops talk about, you know, during a COVID period or post-COVID, it's hard to get customers coming into the business or coming into the shops, and allowing staff members to use their mobile phones during that quiet time. Now, I talk about there is no quiet time. There's always something to do in a business, even if you're in a retail environment or just in a general business setting as well. There's always something to do, and it's really important for a staff member to ask that question. Violating health and safety regulations and policies and procedures. So that's more about, so quite self-explanatory, but if you do see or if you do act inappropriately, like creating some sort of its own tool or product that might cause a violation to even the act, or even swinging on a chair is something just as simple as going against health and safety. Failing to wear uniform or a dress. So if I've got a company uniform, it's also thinking about, you know, if I've got a collared shirt, how is that collared shirt? Is it representable? If I am smoking, for example, I am a smoker, and then I go out and decide to go for a walk down the street, it's really important to have your uniform covered so it's free from any bystander to see. But that also, when I'm referring back to the uniform, making sure it's tucked in a certain way, it's not tucked out, or I'm not wearing, from a health and safety, if I have to wear boots, that I am wearing those particular things. The last point that is quite important as well is being late or unexcused absences on a regular basis. That actually happens, funnily enough, quite often over I would say once a week we've definitely speaking to someone about that, and you know, following a process and understanding what goes with that. It's quite regular where a staff member may decide not to call and think that they've spoken to the manager last week and they didn't have to call back this week to say that they're absent, and then there's a whole chain of events that follows through with that. So we talk about what's the importance of setting the right standards and expectations. It's really, as Colin mentioned before, really important that everybody understands the company direction, their vision and their values. When we went through and re-inducted the staff last week, the staff mentioned how great it was that they were able to even have a better understanding, which is my next point about the company requirements. Where's the business deciding to go? What are they deciding to do? And just understand what's going on. We generally tend to have a high level management meeting, but sometimes it's triggering down the right information to the staff members as well.
I think it's important to let people know that you actually went and did that for one of our clients last week. You actually you went to a location and you actually in New South Wales, and you helped them by doing a presentation and realigning everything, which was fantastic. Yep.
Yeah, it was really good to see, because again, when you're talking about that, it's the when they see that you do these type of whether you call them a workshop or processes or sessions with the staff, they actually believe more into the business and also realize that you're actually investing the time. You're allowing them to spend that time to have a better understanding about the business. And then you also talk about the background on how you've even come to this stage to talk about, okay, well, we've done our own analysis, we've decided to take on the feedback and so forth, to actually align it to where the business is the direction of the business. But it also makes them more motivated, and it actually gets the what I call the two-way street. They actually bring up a lot of ideas even in discussions while you're doing these type of sessions as well. And in turn, it becomes a more positive workplace. And also by doing stuff like that with the right standards, well, I actually like to take this further from doing something like an employer staff satisfaction survey, which we also do. From there, I tend to find when we do one of these surveys, we get further information from the staff to then go, okay, well, we may not have been as clear in our expectations or what we're after, but also provides us an opportunity to find the training needs that we may need to do, or we're lacking where we assume that the staff know that process or know those particular tasks they're supposed to do. And then I think overall, in turn, it does improve the productivity of the staff member because they're on the right train or bus or whatever you'd like to call it, but it also improves the customer service, and in turn that both those two together improves the revenue of the business.
Yeah, well done, Maja. So how do you deal with poor or unacceptable behaviour within the workplace? So what are some of your tips on, which is our topic number 3, for people on this webinar?
Cool. So like I said, we tend to do this quite a bit in the businesses, and especially when I did a in-depth presentation, I did a management training session over the last couple of months specific around this, and it's something that we do share, but actually understanding. So we all say we know how to manage staff and we've all managed staff before, but do you actually understand or get the nitty-gritties? And I talk about just a high level in this webinar, but specifically understanding how that in turn provides us more procedural fairness, which is the first point there. And what we mean by procedural fairness is, have we provided them that we followed the right processes? Followed a particular process, and is the process a correct process? I always say if it's not documented, it didn't happen. So we talk about making sure that you've documented notes, whether it's informal or formal. And I'll either use, I say, put it in a diary or put it in, if you've got a HRIS, fantastic, put it in there. But when you're looking at either your notebook or a diary, just even writing, for example, if I've had a conversation with Colin about his performance, I'd write Colin and whatever the expectation was. And then I know I can refer to that again if I need to, but also I would hope that you had taken some detailed notes somewhere and placed it in the employee's file. Part of the formal process is also inviting the staff member to attend a meeting. Now, under Fair Work, it doesn't have a real rule under how long or how short of time. They would say, what is a considered amount of time? And we generally say 24 hours is an average notice period to provide an employee notice to attend a meeting. And again, I like to forward it with an official letter along with either an invitation or an email to say, hey, look, we're requesting you to attend a meeting. Here's the time, the date and the place for it. But also allowing them to bring a support person. Now, this is really, really important. In the letter that we request them to attend the meeting, we would always allow them to bring a support person. Now, by law or per the Fair Work Act, we actually need to provide that person with an opportunity to bring someone that would be the emotional support for that staff member. So that person will generally be A, the emotional support, but B, will either stop the meeting if they see that that person needs to call a timeout, but they can't actually act as an advocate or act on behalf of that particular staff member.
And I think, Maja, it's preferred that a support person, I always encourage, I know we always encourage, it's not another staff member within the business. It's better being somebody who's not part of the business because of confidentiality, and it's better on that person as well if it's a family friend or a relative or something like that. I think it's important.
That's right. And during our sessions anyway, we go through that in our performance management workshops in more detail to differentiate what they can and they can't do as they bring a support person. But also providing staff the opportunity to respond. Now, that is extremely important. They may choose not to respond. You must note that down. Just so we know, we've asked them to, is there anything else you'd like to bring up to us? Is it something we may not have considered? Was there anything else to add? Generally, those type of 3 questions that I like to add as part of the conversation we have. But then once we've given them the opportunity to respond, we've stopped the meeting and thought about their responses, I'd look at outlining the unsatisfactory conduct or behaviours or the performance and give them a chance to improve. Now, that itself may tend to be done through a performance improvement plan. And perhaps you might also give them a particular document or an email to say, hey, going forward, we need to improve on these particular steps. And then also further give them reasons to why you've made that decision. And then from there, ensuring that the decision that you've given is fair and reasonable, and giving them that time to improve is also considered as reasonable. Now, I'll give an example here because this can tend and vary from different businesses. Let's just say you're a sales organisation and you've got targets of $12,000 for that particular month. Now, by week 1, you'd hope the plan is that you might have $3,000 by the end of that week. Week 2, 6,000. The week after, at 3rd week, you've got 9,000, and by the end of the 4 weeks, you'd hope that their target is to get to 12. If you know you're at week 1 and we've only got $1,000, you might be okay. I might give it another week. Week 2, if you know that they're supposed to be at $6,000 and they're still sitting at $1,000 to $2,000, that might be a cause of concern. But as they go through, giving them the opportunity to improve on that gives you that differentiation of whether you then start to performance manage and how reoccurring is that particular situation. Does that make sense, Cole?
Yeah, 100% sense, and you will tell too as part of the process, what's in the pipeline. If like how many proposals you've got out, look like you're going to be able to achieve this. And if I've got nothing in the pipeline and I've only got $1,000 and I should be at, $6,000, then you sort of know what's going to happen. You can work it out that, like this person. I've always said if someone's trying and, always support them, but if they've given up or their attitude is wrong, we talked about unacceptable behaviour. If the behaviour is not good, then yeah, you sort of want to move it forward and just do it, the proper way in following that performance management process. So well done, Maja. So how to keep staff on track?
So yes, so from, I guess, whether we've had a performance counselling discussions or not, regardless, it's really important to make sure that all staff are kept on track, not just the ones that we're either managing or are staff performance. So we say the way to the employees, the way we manage them is really important. So again, when we go by their styles and so forth, understanding that perhaps someone does like to be questioned at every step in regards to their, to their tasks, and am I doing a good job? Is this correct? And that might be someone that might be quite green in their role, but then as they go further into their employment or have been there some time, there might be somebody that likes to be, okay, I'll get that done and I'll come back to you once I've done it, and if I need support. So understanding each person's way they like to be managed is important. We talk about clear communication channels in place and knowing who to go to if they've got concerns. Not even just concerns, I guess, when it comes to, I know I come to Colin from a sales perspective and opportunities perspective, with someone that will know if they'll come to me from a HR questions or people management in general. But from there on in is making sure, okay, if I'm talking to an employee, I want to make sure, okay, do they know their position? What's their requirements? Do they know their KPIs and targets? Is it actually aligned to their position description? I always tend to say the first thing the employee should sign is a position description. If they perform within that first 6 months of their employment, they should actually have that position description quite readily at hand, and you going to them throughout the probation period and saying what they've done well against that position description and what kind of things that they would improve on. But from there on in, if they've got performance management questions or they're not hitting the targets, is actually bringing that position description out again and having them to go by that. With the policies, as we all talk about, it's very important. And it's not just important just to have the document. It's actually having all managers aligned and understanding what that policy actually says. Also using regular catch-ups. We love doing our regular one-on-one catch-ups to see where we're up to, wherever someone needs help, or just to make sure, especially if someone's in a learning process or even an experience. Sometimes we miss having that. We see someone and we say, oh, Colin's fine. I know he's been getting his KPIs and targets, so I actually don't need to catch up with him. But sometimes that particular employee would want that reinforcement and saying, you are doing a great job. Or, there are ways that we can improve by doing so A, B, and C. And sometimes they want that kind of idea because it might be an idea they had 5 years ago when they started with a business and it's worked, but maybe not keeping abreast with what's new and current. And if it's an underperforming employee, making sure that you've got a performance improvement plan in writing and agreed to by the two of you or the three of you, whoever was in that particular meeting. So we've got the commitment of that staff member. And as we said, if we're not having these staff performing, is following that formal process of underperforming and performance management and going through a performance counselling and disciplinary process.
I think, Maja, if I can just share with the group, we had a wonderful meeting this morning in our team. The HR team talked about, work that they've got on the go, some of the challenges they have with some certain clients, some of the great outcomes they're doing with some clients. Then at the end, one of the things that that was mentioned was, the people to put up their hand and say, listen, I've got capacity for more work if somebody's overloaded. And that was that's just a real good feeling from a business owner's point of view, knowing that staff will sit back and go, hey, I've got capacity. If someone's overloaded, you can send some work my way, and that just shows really good teamwork. And I just think that's a good example of keeping your staff on track and keeping things moving within your business. So I think it's really important. And and again, we talk about poor behaviours before, but I see a poor behaviour is I know I've got capacity, but I'm not going to say anything because I don't want any extra work. If that sort of makes sense. So I think it's important. So you don't, people can hold each other accountable. People can work with one another. And that doesn't necessarily have to be a manager, although we've got to go and obviously oversee it as a manager. But I think what is really good culture is when people put their hand up and say, look, I'm struggling here, can someone help me? Or vice versa, hey, listen, I've got some capacity if anyone's struggling there. That's a really good two-way street. But if it all else fails, well, then you need to do this and follow legislative requirements to avoid fair work claims. So over to you, Maja.
Yeah, so this is one that we generally perhaps, I know as consultants we very much talk about this, but as employers having that understanding that once somebody resigns or leaves, or for whatever reasons the conversation happens to end the employment, it's to understand that even if I resign, they still have that 21 days to either put some sort of claim in place should I wish to do that. And that could be either from an unfair dismissal or a general protections claim. Now, from an unfair dismissal perspective, it talks about whether the process, so we're talking about more about process here, so whether it was harsh or unjustified or unreasonable, and is it, you didn't follow procedural fairness, you didn't follow the formal process, and you basically just decided to make a snap decision to terminate employment. And sometimes, and for our examples, is you can follow the process to a T and someone might put in a claim. It's an employer's responsibility to show that we followed the right process. The other side of it is a general protections claim. So this is whether it's about the person. So it's either that they've made a workplace right, for example, raising a complaint, questioning something about their pay, if they were part of the union and you've decided to terminate them based on that, or it's because of their race, their sex, their gender, whatever they decide to follow, whether they've got an inability to perform the role based on just because rather than anything further, or whether whether they're pregnant, religion, or something like that. So when it talks more about the person, the unfair dismissal, just to recap, is about following process, and the general protections is about the person. So those two is, I guess, the 21 days of being able to make a lodgement, but then they've got 7 days to respond from when they do get that particular notice from Fair Work Commission.
I think it's fair to say also, Maja, this year especially, there's been a bit of disruption with employees and business owners and managers wanting to improve things, and there's a bit of argy-bargy going on. But in 13 years that I've been in this business, I've never seen it before like I've seen it this year, where an employee calls a solicitor the moment a conversation's had about their performance or a union, and all of a sudden, things are going down this pathway that that don't need to. But it just goes to show that it is a bit more active out there in the marketplace at the moment, and we're certainly seeing that, aren't we, Maja?
Definitely. And definitely from a mental health perspective, a lot of people are raising mental health as a concern, and you will see even work cover claims that come out of it, basically because they can't cope with the stress, the anxiety. And I think most of the work cover claims that have come over the last 6 to 12 months since have been quite personal injury or illness, and they don't know whether to reflect it, so it does then fall under work cover, and then we've got processes to go through from that perspective. But let's talk about how we deal with it.
It's a minefield. It's all about how you deal with, which is what we're trying to encourage people to. I always say, call us 1300 for advice before they actually go down that path, to be sure they've got everything covered. Okay, Maja, how to deal with staff conflict? If I can hand this to you.
So, and again, one of the ones that we've dealt with quite a lot now, it's what we're talking about to set up the right steps to minimise the issues. So as I keep referring to is the position description or the job description, making sure that that's in place and that they've signed it and that they follow that. And then you keep linking your conversations towards that. And where the behaviour is lacking, referring them to which part of the policies they've actually breached. So I know in 9 times out of 10, the code of conduct would be breached. And further from that, let's just say I'm not deciding to follow a particular process from a health and safety perspective, or whatever the case may be, it will always link 9 times out of 10 to a particular policy or a procedure. If we're not doing the performance reviews, we're not telling them how good or where they need improvement. Now, understanding performance reviews versus performance management are different. And having regular reviews, even 15 minutes to 30 minutes, sometimes depending on how often you do these, but generally speaking, 15 to 30 minutes, if you're doing regular performance reviews, it's just to check in. How are you going? Where are you up to with that? What kind of also help do you need? And how do we take you to the next level? And how do we bring you further to the standards that we'd like to get to? And regular feedback, whether it's good or bad, letting them know and saying, look, okay, Maja, you've done a certain particular task, good effort, I can see you really tried doing that. Perhaps next time try this, this, and this. Or have you thought about this, this, and this? And also talking to them how they would say in our business, I say, okay, what's the problem? And give me some situations or solutions that you think we could recommend. And just using that as an education tool and providing, whether, like I said, whether it's good or bad feedback. But if you know that they haven't tried or have continued to try and it's not consistent, or they're not following that process, then following the performance counselling process. The other side here about educating staff around conflicts. So when we do the policy reinductions to the staff, but they're also in the policies when you get the staff to sign them off, it's also talking about these 3 options. So whether it's conflict related between an employee versus employee, an employee versus a manager, or an employee, I've got contract even versus employee in some instances, is in the first and foremost option is option 1, which you'll talk to that person informally. Now you try to resolve that matter between the 2 independently without getting others involved. Then option 2 is making an informal complaint saying, hey, look, Colin, I'm just going through, for example, Colin, I'm going through some particular situation with person X, just an informal conversation I've had with them on this particular date. Something's either not happened or, you know, I just want to keep you in the loop of what's happening. If it gets further or I'm not happy, I might raise a further complaint, which is option 3, and put it in writing. Now, when we're giving, if we're choosing to go with option 3 as a formal written complaint, even when we're going with option 2 and option 1, I always talk about examples. So on this particular date, I spoke to so-and-so, or they spoke to me in this particular way and I wasn't happy with it. Then further to the formal complaint, writing the description, what happened, when did it happen, reason why it happened, what was the altercation or what was the situation between that, and if there were any particular witnesses. Now, when we say complaint must be signed, whether it's in a formal document or whether it's an email sign-off, is important to provide that. And then from there, we'll actually do an investigation further into what the next steps need to be and come to a resolution.
So some people think, oh God, this is a real tedious process, Maja. But if something turns to crap, if I say that, things go from bad to worse, and it gets investigated by an insurance company or a lawyer or something like that, they want all this documentation documented. And you know, this is where we see people make mistakes because they've spoken before they've actually and not recorded anything, which has created something. Now we have a question. With an informal complaint, do you need to get anything in writing with an informal complaint? Can you answer that question?
Not necessarily. Yeah, not necessarily, but what I would do if I'm the employee getting that complaint or the manager even getting an informal version of the complaint, I, as a manager, have the due diligence to make sure that I've noted it down in my employee files or who it's regarding. But if it's option 1, an employee to an employee or vice versa, whether it's a manager or a contractor, as an employee, I'd choose to look at it and just make sure that it's briefly documented as well.
Sometimes what
Sometimes
happens too is, sometimes what happens is they just want you to know as a manager, so you've got your eyes out and you're observing it. So if you see it happen again, I think you should do something about it because they've brought it to your attention.
That's right, and I tend to find if you don't have a HRIS system or anything in play like that, I generally tend to email myself just to say what I did on that particular day, and it just comes back in my inbox. I send it to myself, and then I've got it as a documented evidence, some sort of, so we can keep that in the staff members file.
So I just want to say, Tamara, great question,
Okay.
and thank you for asking that question. Beautiful. Okay, the importance of leadership. So I'll let you go. You're doing a great job, Maja, so I'll get you to continue on.
So the importance from especially being a leader or not, and you know, we tend to talk about leadership versus management, and the two differentiate. They are two different aspects. So good leadership should come with following on from the vision, the values, the directions, but it's also looking at how you can motivate the team and providing that feedback to them. And as I said, it's good or bad, but always constructing it is a positive criticism, as I like to say it sometimes. Just being able to say, okay, well, this is what's happened, but this is what we can do as a collectively to try and fix that, or what can we do to help and support that staff member to achieve it. Try and enhance the productivity and achieve the results. And I say, I made a cute little, what I call a funny, one person falls down, we all fall down. And I know everyone knows that little nursery rhyme that we all fall down if we're not achieving those particular results. So it's about uplifting each other for that. And influencing the behaviour, so the positive reinforcements, the talents, and so forth from there. But also when it comes to the leading the team is, okay, we've got a change here, and what are we planning to do with that change, and communicate that change to the staff members. And also talking to the employees about how we can fulfill their needs and development. So I like to say, what is your objective or development that you'd like to do? And when I onboard and introduce them to the performance review process, I say, okay, we're not going to have a review for another 6 months, but what I want you to think about between now and the next 6 months is, what do you want to plan to develop in for the further 6 months from there on in? At least they've got a vision of where you want them to go.
And Maja, I noticed you got the highlighted here, motivate the team. So some people on this hookup might think, well, why do I have to continue to motivate the team? Why can't they come to work self-motivation, you know, being self-motivated? I think it's really important that, you know, I talk about leadership and everything we do. We talk about this, and it's about making sure that we're taking our staff on a journey of showing them where our business is going, how it's growing, or areas of concern, you know, what needs to happen to do it, you know. And again, you know, this morning in our team meeting, I asked the question about, you know, do you truly believe that we're doing meaningful work in this business for our clients and for yourself? And you know, is it fulfilling? Do you feel, I use the word freedom, do you feel, you know, when you've achieved something, do you feel this release of freedom of, you know what, I've achieved this and it's a good feeling? Because to me, that's what motivation is. It's not monetary, it's not having a dinner out and stuff like that. It is about, you know, I love my job and I'm embedded in this business, and I do meaningful work. So therefore, that's what's important when we talk about, you know, the leadership. And I always talk about, you know, when you're giving direction and you talk about goals and objectives, and this is what we need to achieve, a lot of staff behaviours go away because we get everyone focused, which I think is really, really important. Okay, so how to empower your staff to behave appropriately to grow your business? And I think that's a very good segue into this last part of the importance of conducting workshops. Now, I do this for a living, and I just want you to talk about this, Maja, because this is a bit of self-development as well. It's great.
Yeah, so for us, especially conducting workshops, and I used to say to Colin, one of my development objectives when I first started 5 years ago was that public speaking. Who would have thought I'd be on video cameras, public speaking in a forum of a webinar 5 years ago? I don't think I would have been doing that, but even workshops and being confident enough, I like to say I'm a high eye, but sometimes high eyes can shy away from this type of events as well. Well, what we see conducting the workshops, what I found has been really good is we practice what we preach. We talk about, okay, we set out the expectations, we want to communicate, and we're going to go on that continuation of trying to communicate better with all staff members and set those expectations. But also we talk about culture, and everyone talks about we want to be a positive culture. Well, if you're not going to plan to improve through communication or reset expectations, the culture itself won't grow. But if you're talking about that consistently, it'll organically move in a more positive direction. Everyone will be much happier and supportive to help each other and to expand from there. And yes, we talk about from a professional development perspective, giving staff the opportunity to be able to develop in their roles by conducting these. For example, when we do the how to manage and motivate through our with our clients and so forth, those particular workshops, like I said, you might know how to manage staff and you've managed them for some time. Actually going through the nitty-gritties and understanding that in turn, they will learn something and develop from that particular workshop that they've done. And they'll be forever grateful that you've actually wanted to invest with that in them attending these type of workshops or webinars.
Yep, it's all about that satisfaction. Okay, reward and recognition. Maja, please.
Yeah, so we forever talk about some sort of ways that we can recognise staff and give them an opportunity to, and sometimes we talk about rewards being monetary or non-monetary. So whether it's recognising the great work that they do or that they're even trying, and Colin says, I'll never let someone go because they tried. Now, sometimes it'll be just a good pat on the back or a high five or something like that, just to praise somebody on how well they did that particular task or how well collectively we've worked on a project together. But even personalising it, and I talk about calling it as it happens. Now, if you're going to say high five to someone, we just finished the recruitment and we've got 4 out of 4 recruits for that particular client and 1 dropped off. And, you know, as it happened, like we high-fived each other because we all did such a great job. But then when we went to get that extra 4th person again for that client, they absolutely loved it. But we made sure that the people involved as a group were collectively praised for the hard work that they've done. And they set a priority of when it happens. And we talk about celebrating the wins as we like to high-five or we ring that particular dong in our office. But it's really important to understand that when you're rewarding somebody, it actually doesn't have to be a monetary benefit. If it is, great. And if you've got the ability to do that, whether it's that or a gift card, but sometimes it's something as, you know, allowing someone to have a half day off or a full day off, or even bringing some goodies or treats. We on Friday had ladies come into the office with some fresh juices, just coming into that and just lifted the morale of the team just because we could. And sometimes we provide trophies or medals. We might do something at a Christmas party. Someone asked and played a little joke, said, oh, we're going to do a Christmas in July party. And then said, can I win at least the best mullet of the year? And, you know, something is such a little banter, turning something into a fun and entertaining process.
I think it's really important, you know, like, again, just the little things. Like, you know, we had a breakfast 2 weeks ago, Maja, where they brought the whole team in as a thank you, you know, like a breakfast or drinks or something like that. All of that, you know, has a great, you know, it's great. And if I can finish off with this last slide, you know, the value of having a healthy workplace, you know, as it's written here, you know, it increases the well-being, improves morale, staff motivation. I think flexibility is really important, that work-life balance. So, you know, us as a business, you know, we don't, you know, we don't micromanage people. We don't put time in, time out, or anything like that. We want it to be flexible. We want people to have that work-life balance. And I know when my team work hard. So it's just being aware and recognising that with the guys. You know, having the right resources and tools to complete tasks such as softwares and technologies of today, I think is really, really important. You know, having a great and healthy workplace will definitely reduce your overall staff turnover, and I think it will, you know, reduces the stress of having the right leadership team as well. If you lead from the front and you communicate, and I always push that, then definitely it's important. And that sense of family and friendly workplace, well, one of the things I always talk about is you spend a third of your life at work, a third of your life at home asleep, a third of your life with a loved one, trying to find one or trying to run away from one, something like that. So you want to make sure that that 1/3 of a person's life is in the workplace, is fulfilling, and they're doing meaningful work and they love their job. That concludes, the topics that we talked about in the webinar. We've got some special offers, and again, employer and staff satisfaction surveys. We just tend to be having a lot of companies doing them at the moment, so we're going to continue on with that 20% off. So anyone in this webinar would like an employer and staff satisfaction survey, please contact us. We've created some downloads. This is a fresh new download. Download our free HR checklist, which gives you 12 steps to best practice HR. This is something that's been developed. Now, this just shows what teamwork is all about. I've not developed this. This has been, in many ways, 5 HR professionals that work for us that have put their ears together, and they've created this 12-step HR best practice guide, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And Maja, that was led by yourself and Alison, which was well done. On the 22nd of June, we have a workshop, which is how to manage and motivate staff through a HR process. If people don't know what that's all about, you can click on this link and that'll take you to our website, but it's always a popular program. Anyone who manages staff, thinking about managing staff, I believe should attend. And I know some people on this hookup have already been on this workshop with me, and I know that they've loved it. If you've got any questions or you want to know anything more about what we do, or anything about the webinar that Maja and I have just hosted, then please reach out to us, give us an email, and again, I just want to say thank you very much for being part of our webinar, and you can book in a free 15-minute chat. Our next webinar is setting up the best start for a new financial year. And I'm going to talk a bit about things around what businesses need. And this is about leadership and leading a team, of having good customer insight and customer foresight, and looking at the industry trends and the target markets and competition, I think is important. And just ways to package your products and services for good revenue. And, maybe it's time to refresh your business plan. And that seems to be a big thing that's happening at the moment with many companies, because COVID's come and gone, and people have changed their business model. So now it's about refreshing our plan. What do we want to do to have a successful 21-22 financial year and beyond? So thank you very much. Again, thank you, Maja. I could not do these webinars without people like you. You're absolutely wonderful. You did a great job. And everyone, enjoy the week ahead. And if you need any help, feel free to reach out to us. And that concludes our webinar today. Thanks, Maja.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you. See you. Bye.